All right, welcome back to the Barcode Collective podcast, where the code within Barcode represents this idea of having courage to optimize and develop your essence. So within these conversations, we really try to highlight other entrepreneurs or people that are leaning into discomfort as they not only develop themselves, but try to develop businesses, develop relationships, and whatever it might be. So a lot of challenges come with that, and hopefully we'll uncover some of that. We're actually sitting in Pasadena right now. We're in the Spacebar. So if you hear any background noise, that's Lifted Botanical Bar up front, blending acai bowls and smoothies. So don't mind that. This isn't about perfection. This is about sharing of stories and all the dirtiness that sometimes is involved with that. So today I got the founders of Hone joining me, Chris and Ari. Hone is a ceremonial matcha grade beverage, superfood, elevated, if you will, with cordyceps, B vitamins, and a little bit of monk fruit. So stoked to guys have you here and to learn a little bit more about Hone and the origin story there, as well as you guys as founders. And hopefully we can leave people with some inspiration, or maybe deter people from jumping into a business because they ain't really ready for the grind and the struggle that is. So real quickly, Chris, we'll start with you. Why don't you a quick little introduction of like where you're from, your brief background, and then we'll jump over to Ari.
Yeah, no problem. So my name is Chris Gonzales. I'm one of the co-founders of Hone. I went to the University of Washington for finance and entrepreneurship.
Oh,
that's where I met Ari. We were not necessarily on our health pathway at the time when we first met, but eventually we got there and we realized we had a lot of aligned goals. Mm-hmm. Grew up in Washington, spent some time in Los Angeles growing up, have an athletic background, also an artist.
Awesome.
So yeah, did a lot of the design work and the branding in-house.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So that was a really cool, fun part of building the brand, was being able to flex creatively, with Ari.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ari, you want to jump in, tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Ari. I'm from Boulder, Colorado. Went to the University of Washington for school. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to be doing in school. And so I just dove into entrepreneurship. In high school, I started up a landscaping company and we did pretty well. So nice. I had this bug from then on that I could start my own thing. And throughout school, I was just constantly doing different classes to learn about how to start a business, learning different random skills, going from computer science to website development to social media management to all these different entrepreneurship classes. I think I changed majors like 5 times during university. At one point, I was helping manage a tech company, and my mom, just kind of trying to be the entrepreneur that she is. She moved down to Portland, so about 3 hours drive south of Seattle, to start up a cannabis grow.
Nice.
And because it was really the only family in town, she needed a lot of help. So I started driving down there pretty much every weekend, and we decided to change it to a cannabis kombucha, like an energy drink kombucha.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was going to be a matcha version too, way back in like 2016. And we kind of went through the whole development of trying to make a THC version and a non-THC version to take it to the mass market. We got through the whole product development. By the end of that, she was still running a grow up, and she ended up having to go bankrupt.
Oh, wow.
So, but that kind of, again, just sparked this little fire in me to start up a beverage company. And after school, Chris and I kind of serendipitously met up just to talk about our experiences, not to at all like work together at that time, just because we were both working on separate beverage companies. And that the morning I was meeting up with him, the person I was working with actually bailed.
Savages.
I think one of the first things I said to Chris after catching up was like, I don't honestly know why I'm here.
And that's, oftentimes how a lot of these magical things happen, man.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way.
Yeah. And it was similar for his story. The people he was working with the week prior kind of started to bail out, and we decided to work together pretty much on that day.
Yeah, man. And, we can't discredit like that. I mean, that happens a lot, and it's like, as being an entrepreneur, I mean, we do try to do a lot of things on our own, but in reality, like, it takes a team, and like, that's been my biggest frustration, is trying to find people as loyal and as committed as you are. It's not that you have to know it all. Like, I literally, all I ask is like to be there, show up, let's do the work. Right. And it's like, that's been my background with like my brothers in Seattle. And it's like, just having that, not all families, I guess, just because you're family doesn't mean you're tight, and that happens. But like, for us, that is, right. So it's like, we always knew that we had each other to fall back on, and just having that security is, half the battle. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a challenge to try to find partners and to work with because of that. Not too many people have that same either work ethic or commitment, and it almost seems like everybody does at the beginning, because everyone's hyped, everyone's excited.
Yeah,
but it doesn't take long for people to fall out
until you realize it's not glamorous. You're not getting paid anytime soon, and it's going to be twice the work of a normal job.
For sure, dude, for sure. So we're all fellow Huskies here, so I'll celebrate that.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
Pacific Northwest. Did you move to Seattle for school, or were you there for a little bit?
I did.
Okay.
I'd actually never been to Seattle prior to orientation.
Yeah,
just sent it.
Yeah, you were, I guess, used a little bit to the elements, being in Boulder and having some seasons, stuff like that. So Seattle weather probably wasn't much for you.
It was the first winter was a challenge, but there was also some outside forces that made it so. But I think the change of season is always tough for me. As soon as I'm in it, like by about this time, it doesn't feel like it's too big of a deal.
Yeah.
But like, I think like October, November can be kind of a challenge.
Yeah. So you guys both, I guess, when you guys came together, were both talking about creating a beverage company. And you had a little experience, Ari, with your mom and kind of some development there. It sounds like a little bit of guidance from other entrepreneurs. At least you had a model to kind of shape after. What about you, Chris? Did you have any kind of entrepreneurial mentors growing up, or what was it that gave you the confidence to pursue entrepreneurship in college, and then also try to create your own beverage company?
Yeah, sure. So my first experience with entrepreneurship was actually when I was about 20. Like I had mentioned before, I'm kind of an artist, and I was a freelance artist at the time. So me and my friends had started a clothing company, ran that for a couple of years with them, and we kind of fell out. Things didn't go well. It was a lot of learning like a lot of lessons learned all at once. But that was when I got the first taste of, giving something you built yourself to the world and the satisfaction that brings with it. So ever since then, I kind of had a knack for, looking for pain points, trying to figure out where I can, make a name for myself anywhere in the entrepreneurial world. I went to the University of Washington with the sole purpose of going to the Foster School of Business for their entrepreneurship program. And that's where I kind of, started developing products. And there's a case study class there where you actually ideate, take a product to market, and you actually collect real capital and then give it back to the program as part of your course grade.
Oh, cool.
And that was the original product that I was working on. So it was called Veridity.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of a play on words. And that was ceremonial matcha with cordyceps, B vitamins, ginger, citrus, in a ready to drink format. So It was a plastic bottle. And, these were small batch. We were making them in-house. We were using my partner's fraternity kitchen because those are technically commercial kitchens.
Okay.
It's a great loophole for anybody who's trying to get started in college. You can technically use any fraternity kitchen, and it's completely legal with the FDA.
That is dope.
Yep.
But even better, maybe sorority kitchens and just like slide in there.
Yeah, a little cleaner, a little bit more fun. Probably make some cooler friends.
Right.
But
awesome.
That was the project that Ari and I met up to speak about. So he had just gotten back. I think he was in Spain, and he had gotten back, and he was ready to dive headfirst into the entrepreneurial CPG world. And So we met up to talk about, what I was working on. I'd been working on it, I think, for about like 10 months at that point. Does that sound right? Give or take?
Yeah, I mean, we met up in December, and I got back from Spain like May, and I think you started at the beginning of that year. So yeah, almost a year.
Yeah. So we had seen a lot of traction with that product. I had 3 partners when we first started, and there was one pivotal moment where we dropped off a case of this at the lounge in the computer science building and came back later that night. We looked, checked the fridge just to see if our product was there. Nothing was there. We figured they didn't stock the shelves, so we came back and kind of had a stiff word with them. And they were like, dude, we put it out. It's sold out overnight.
That's dope.
And we hadn't done any marketing for it. We hadn't told anybody about it in that building, so nobody really knew what was going on. They just read it and took it.
Right.
That was kind of, the small snowball that started rolling down the hill for me.
That's cool.
Okay, this is like got some legs.
That's awesome.
So with that little like epiphany, I think I wanted to take it out of the classroom when I graduated, and my partners didn't. They went on to get jobs, and one of them had to go back to Japan. She was actually the one who educated me on matcha.
Gotcha.
And then met up with Ari. Ari has, a complementary skill set, it seemed, to what I'm more of like a creative person, kind of like head in the clouds, a little less, organized and disciplined. And he's definitely more on like the disciplined, regimented side. I mean, we both have a little bit of both, but
yeah, it's about balance, man, especially in a partnership, right? Like if everyone's doing the same thing at equal levels, it's like something's getting dropped elsewhere. That's for sure. Yeah. Like how valuable do you think your guys' time was at the UW, specifically studying business and entrepreneurship, into like what you've done now or what you're doing?
I would say incredibly valuable. I mean, not all of it is directly applicable. I got majors in finance and in entrepreneurship. The finance side of things was definitely helpful for me to just be able to understand the jargon and, the minutia behind trying to create something that isn't bleeding money. So I think just practically that was really helpful. I don't know if I needed the entire course of it, but the entrepreneurship side was great just because it taught you how to be creative, how to choose partners, how to find product market fit. And yeah, that part was indispensable. I really enjoyed that.
What about you, Ari?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I asked.
Honestly, I don't. For me personally, I was just so like gung ho on starting my own business. I was talking to one of my close friends in school the other day, and he's like, "Dude, you did so many business ideas throughout school," and so I think because of that, like, it was just something that I was so interested in already, that I was already doing all my own research and doing all my own stuff. And it helped to meet people like Chris and a lot of people that we met. Like the only thing that I kind of look at is, would it have helped in the long run? I don't know. Like at the end of the day, like if I didn't have the distraction of being in school and was just basically doing everything all entrepreneurship related, that might have been more efficient for me. But would that have led to a good life? Probably not. I mean, I think this cool thing with university is like you learn how to balance a lot, right? You have a lot of stuff going on compared to because at one point I pretty much dropped out to start up a tech startup, and we were trying to raise money. And my business partner at that time, he had no idea how to separate business from life. And I think that's an issue with a lot of entrepreneurs, honestly, is that like it's really hard to stop that constant thought of your business and to just go live your life as well. And I think graduating from university helped for me to do that a lot more.
Yeah.
Like if I just went straight into the entrepreneurship path, like it probably would have been super difficult for me to do that.
I think it was really valuable in the sense that networks were really important, taught you how to network. Having that degree gets you a lot of meetings that otherwise we probably wouldn't be able to get. If we were just to tell somebody we're career entrepreneurs with no education, highly doubt we'd be able to get in the doors that we're able to get into. And I really learned how to learn and be really patient through my university time. So I think, for those 3 things outside of the curriculum itself, I think those were the most valuable aspects.
Yeah, because, you often hear, that exactly, where it's like, what are you actually learning? Like, is it going to be more beneficial than like just hitting the streets, taking those lessons and learning? And, I think there is a great path towards that, but there is not necessarily the structure, right? So it's like me personally, when I went to the UW, it was sociology and law, societies, and justice. It was like I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was the youngest in my family, so my parents just really wanted me to complete the 4 years. But there was no path beyond that. At that point, there was no thought of entrepreneurship. Like I fucking got out of school and worked for Pepsi, filling the shelves type of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like so now, looking back sometimes when things get rough or I don't know what to do, I'm like, fuck, I wish I went to business school, or I wish I knew, because I even when I went to UW, I didn't really participate in college culture. I was, living at home and going to campus, right? So it's like I even missed out on, say, all the networking opportunities that could be really beneficial. So, me personally, I didn't really get shit out of it. I got a degree. That's about it. So, but when I look back, I'm like, fuck, man, like what answers would I have had I gone? So, yeah, I don't know what the right answer is. I think it is very individual on what type of person is going to thrive in that curriculum versus what type is just going to benefit from just hitting the ground running and taking L's and learning as you go,
I will say that university really stress tested my desire to become an entrepreneur. Being around a bunch of other, highly successful people who come from successful families and want to go get successful jobs straight out of college, that really forces you to stop and think about what level of comfort you want in your life. Because even though, I went to the University of Washington with the full intention of just getting the entrepreneurship degree and then going out and trying to do my own thing. And then by the end of my time there, I found myself actually, on a crossroads trying to figure out if I wanted, predictability, comfort, a job, or continue down the entrepreneurial road. So even after I graduated, I still needed to take another spiritual journey and confirm that. So I think that was a great opportunity for me to be around people who are flying off into like amazing, successful jobs, and me wanting to take the hard road.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about Hone in particular, and just even the business itself. So there's the product, right? And then maybe give us a little bit of background in what that looks like from the business standpoint. So it's a consumer product, and where do you even start with creating something like that? Is it like dialing in all the all the ingredients and making sure that's all sourced consistently and whatnot? Like, where do you even start with that type of business?
Well, I guess we can start all the way back at UW. So first pain point that kind of led down this entire rabbit hole. So I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was on Adderall through like college the entire time. So for like 5-6 years, I was on it. And that stuff's pretty intense. It's antagonistic, highly dependent on that. So I really wanted to get off of it. It was starting to change my personality. I didn't feel like I had the same types of motivation. I felt like I had to like ratchet up my dose, month after month. It was just like this very weird, like wired and tired space I was living in.
Yeah.
And, I was doing all kinds of research leading up to the introduction of Veridity. So I was trying all these different nootropics, meditation, different types of exercise, diets, trying to, reduce inflammation, just so I could find a mode that would help me wean myself off of Adderall. And then through friends and, research and just a number of different sources, I put together something that was starting to work for me, which was the B vitamins, the cordyceps, and the matcha. That was something that really put me in a space where I would stay awake, because when I would try to come off of Adderall, I was so incredibly depleted that I would sleep for 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
So that was something that actually ended up working for me. So we developed that into the original ready to drink, and that started to prove to be beneficial for other people as well. So
even at that standpoint, where it's like, okay, I got these 3 things that are working for me, and I'm going to create this ready to drink thing. Where you just like literally going to fucking Whole Foods and grabbing some matcha and then piecing this shit together and be like, all right, let me just mark it up $1 so I'm making some money off of it.
No, it was purely for personal use when I was doing my own research. So my original business partner, one of my original business partners, Shiori, she's from Japan, and she taught me about matcha. But I was messing around with like the mushrooms and the B vitamins and stuff. And then she introduced that, and I was like, okay, this tastes great. it fits, kind of the market trend. And I think it's really effective. Like I'm finding myself able to operate at a higher level.
Right.
So we settled with that, made a little flavor out of it, ginger syrup with like lime, lemon, and orange. And it was delicious. It was great. People loved it. And that's kind of where like the whole product began. And then it morphed, tons through that experience as that brand. And then Ari came on, and Ari has like a lot of expertise when it comes to finding and vetting high quality suppliers. So the entire face of the company changed when we got together. I mean, we rebranded, we changed the format of how we deliver our stuff, and he really changed the mouthfeel and the effect of everything by upping the quality of all the ingredients.
Yeah. So I mean, like some of the things that might have been presented to you guys through school, or just like common sense type of shit, could be roadblocks for others. So like one thing that that even just pops into my mind, because I think of all sorts of different shit. I'm like, how do I do this? Whatever it is, right? So like even at this phase of like putting together this initial product,
mm-hmm.
like how much testing goes into, okay, I'm going to put, what kind of bottle do I even put this thing in?
Yeah.
Is this even airtight? How long is this even going to last? Things like, you're putting this in somebody's fridge now to have them buy it, is like, how much of that is like 100% vetted and dialed in, where like the shelf life of this thing, versus you're just like, fuck it here. You know what I mean? Like how much, you know what I'm saying?
It's a fine line.
Okay.
It's a fine line.
That was a hilarious question, man. I mean, like, there was one point when Chris and I started working together, we were doing a ready to drink. So we were going for a bottled version, right? So we were just like testing it. And so I got lucky because I'm from Boulder, Colorado, which is one of the homes of the food industry, right? And so because being from that town, I got introduced to a lot of people in the food industry like immediately, as soon as I was in this world, which just was coincidence. I didn't even know that was the case growing up. But so I got introduced to a lot of these people. And when we were just doing all these tests, we literally would just bottle them and just put it somewhere in our house, somewhere safe, semi-safe, and just see how long it lasted.
Yeah.
Right. And that was literally what food scientists told us to do. This was not that is food science. It's just see what happens.
And like, who was the one that had to take that sip on the 7th day?
We would both drink it. I mean, neither one of us are like that picky or grossed out by stuff like that.
Was the metric taste, or was it like, all right, now we're on the clock, 2 hours, ding ding ding, who's shitting on themselves, who's not? You know what I'm saying? Like where was the bar set where like, this is no good?
We never got sick off of any of the tests. Yeah, but you can smell it
every single time. It was like, so the smell was off, right? That was probably the first indicator. The other thing that we were testing a lot was the color, right? So to make sure that the color stayed okay. For how long did the color stay okay? Like when you taste it, like the thing about expiration dates that we've learned is that expiration dates are not a legal thing. They're a grocery store thing. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily an FDA, like FDA doesn't require you to have an expiration date. Grocery stores require you to have an expiration dates.
Gotcha.
So like when it comes down to it, like our powder blend has a 2-year shelf life, right? And so at 2 years, then it starts to degrade. It starts to degrade nutritionally, taste wise, and that's pretty much it. Like a lot of the time, those products aren't necessarily going to make you sick. They're just going to start to degrade in value.
Gotcha. Yeah, very useful, man.
But if you start to do when we were doing the bottled drink, we were doing it ourselves, and it was so difficult to do it ourselves. Like we were trying to have like a 2-week or month-long shelf life, put in different types of stabilizers, right? And we kind of had it down at the end.
It was close.
And then we got some advice from an advisor of ours who was the CTO of Chobani and helped launch that, right? And in 15 minutes, he's like, nope, you guys should not do that.
Wrong. Everything's wrong. He's like, go to powders, ship it to your customer. Don't ship water. You're wasting your money and your time.
Yeah.
We made the transition, and we were going to balance both. And the pandemic hit just like that. Because we had launched our company several months before the pandemic hit. And we were in a position where we had a beneficial health product that we could ship easily, and we were already ready for that. So we killed the ready to drink line. Just went all powders.
So even with the ready to drink line, the intention was to go direct to consumer for the most part?
No. We were gonna open up distribution. Oh no, with the ready to drink.
Oh yeah, I mean like retailers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
yeah, like he was saying, shipping water, and and so the timing of the transition was perfect for you guys because you made that shift a little bit before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
It couldn't have been better timing.
And then with that transition, did it go less about retailers and more direct to consumer?
Yes.
And that was part of the strategy from the jump, or when the pandemic hit?
I mean, when the pandemic hit, we had to rethink everything. I mean, you can.
Well, yeah. So we got super lucky in a way, right? Because we talked, his name is Jared. We talked with Jared probably 4 months before the pandemic hit. And we were about to launch the ready to drink. Like we had the labels done, we sourced the bottles, we were about to go. And we were just like, okay, we're just going to go do this. And then we met with Jared, and both Chris and I before this were a little skeptical to do ready to drink, just because of the margins, just because of the hassle of it, right? And we wanted to do an online model, and it's very difficult to do an online model with bottled drinks.
Yeah.
And so when we met with Jared, it was like, okay, we should just do this. And so we switched over for the next 2 to 3 months. We worked on branding and make sure that everything was all good, sourced the jars, and switched over. And so right before the pandemic hit, we launched. We launched in Black Friday, so the November, and then the pandemic hit in March, right? And we were just focusing on Instagram. That was kind of our only way that we were really selling it at first.
And then even through that, knowing that it was going to be, kind of an organic growth, through Instagram, what did the back end of distribution and stuff look like then? Were all those channels built to scale, or were you guys literally fucking filling bottles type of shit and printing labels?
Yeah, no, it was very much just us doing everything from start to finish.
Shipping
for quite a while.
Shipping out of the house.
Yep.
And at that point, what kind of FDA approval needs to be done, if any?
So there is something called cottage law, which unfortunately we weren't able to take advantage of. But if anybody else out there is trying to start their own business, look into cottage law, because if you're making under X amount of money, which is typically a couple $100,000, you can register your own home kitchen as a commercial kitchen.
Gotcha.
And you can operate out of there. So for anybody else out there who's trying to do a bar, something baked, something cooked, definitely check that out, because it can make life a lot easier and this way more accessible. But what we had to do is we had to get a commercial kitchen. So we rented space in a shared kitchen in South Seattle, and we bought ourselves some machinery and set up this really ratchet, closed air scrubber, because operating with our powdered mushrooms and our powdered matcha, everything is airborne. So in the shared kitchen, they don't want that stuff everywhere. I mean, rightfully so. So we bought a greenhouse, critically taped it. We put visqueen underneath it, critically taped that on the side, cut holes in it, put a shower drain with mesh in it to push air out, and then had a box fan pushing air through a carbon filter in. And we just built this really ramshackle but super effective operation for ourselves. And we lived inside of that matcha box for quite a while. Super late nights, just mixing, bottling.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's up.
The first, so we got a little lucky, in a sense, the facility that we were using with the greenhouse inside of the facility, because it was COVID, they couldn't come over there. So they actually approved us faster because of COVID.
That's awesome.
Which was interesting.
So with, where you guys are today and kind of where you started, how much of, I guess, even if you had a game plan going in, which, I'm sure you guys did, it sounds like it had to get shifted when COVID hit. What kind of were the biggest changes that COVID brought to the table that you guys had to kind of rethink and start fresh from?
I think the hardest part was honestly just a mentality thing. The pandemic just changed everything, right? And so it's okay, how do we deal with what's going on in the outside world and contain it inside and be okay and keep on working and doing what we're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And then working from home and not really seeing each other, but kind of sneaking out of our homes to see each other.
Yeah, keeping an optimistic mindset was pretty challenging at times. And
Yeah.
keeping our eye on the ball was hard just because nothing was certain, you know?
Yeah.
And things already aren't certain when you're starting a company in like a chaotic way. And then when society's in chaos and you're in chaos, the business is in chaos. There were times that felt pretty bleak, but, you know, fortunately we had each other so we could wrangle the other person back in.
Yeah.
I think our freakouts happened at staggered times. So we always had one person to like pull the other one back in, like it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, definitely can relate to that challenge. And it's like, I think because you guys do have a level of balance between life and business, I think that in that sense probably brought more challenge than not, than if you were just all in on the fucking business and you're like, all right, fuck it, I can't go anywhere, I can't do shit, everybody else is at home, I got a direct to consumer product and everyone is getting these stimmy checks. Let me slide some matcha into that stimmy budget because you know, like online, you know, retail sales through the roof, right? So it's like, did you notice that being beneficial to you guys, you know? Once
for sure. Yeah.
It was,
I mean,
I was just saying.
You go ahead, man.
Okay, I guess I'll go. I was just gonna say we both had roommates during the pandemic, and I noticed for myself, like my roommates weren't working as much, and so it was just, I think that distraction was difficult, right? Was just like making sure that we were both still working, while roommates really weren't doing anything, and so it was just like, just making sure we continue to do that while they were just always doing something kind of distracting.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of a challenge.
Yeah.
For sure.
But it was super useful for us because everyone was now buying products online. They were all looking for wellness products. They were all looking to replace their coffee, to get rid of kind of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were definitely a lot of benefits that we reaped from that, you know, as weird as that is to say. I think people's mindsets switching towards something that is like less anxiety focused and more beneficial for the long term. Also, you know, there's a lot of respiratory benefits from our blend. So people had that on their mind.
Yeah.
And working from home, I think a lot of people, you know, they started losing motivation. They started, you know, feeling a little bit less healthy, a little less like awake, and like they're just slamming coffee and have anxiety because they're doom scrolling all day. So like, I mean, there's a pretty good case to make for us, you know, in that realm. So it was easier for us to connect with people like from the jump with very little budget. And we just started conversations around that. And I think that's what really got our following started.
Yeah. And with the direct consumer, you know, business, there is time that needs to be spent on Instagram and interacting and building rapport. And, and obviously you guys, so at that point when you guys were balancing, were you guys actually managing like socials and actually the back end of like sales and then actually doing the product too? Or was there a little bit of a team around that? No,
it was us. We did literally everything.
How'd that balance look? Like, did you guys divide and conquer, and where, you know, Ari was holding down the social and the conversations, the customer service side of things, or what that look like for you guys?
We bounced back and forth. I mean, we would kind of just take turns. You know, we both kind of got really exhausted of the social media stuff. So, you know, one of us would take it for a month, the other one would take it for a month, and then we'd bounce back and forth. You know, we started pulling in interns beginning of last year, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, the interns are...
Through the UW as well?
Yeah. So anybody out there who's trying to do their own thing, check out Handshake, post for interns. You're going to find a lot of really high quality help.
Literally. I mean, I just got on that site like last week and haven't pulled the trigger. I really, I don't know. I struggle with interns. I think I struggle with my time and trying to explain really what I want to do. So I still find myself doing so much shit that I should not be doing on my own. You know, largely you guys struggle with delegation a lot of times. And like, it's just frustrating to like try to think you explain what you're trying to, even if like putting together a friggin' like digital fucking asset of like an image or something, like doing your best to try to explain it. And then it comes back. It's like, this is not even remotely close to what so, you know, but yeah, so maybe I can
notice that like that if you like very specific tasks work, right? Like design, I feel like was kind of difficult. But like if you have for social media, it's like just post.
Yeah.
Like post at this time, post something kind of funny. Like it's gonna be probably just as good as we have, and just have some like basic kind of criteria. And then the other one was like an event intern, which worked really well too. It was just like go find events.
Yeah. That's something I'd probably really benefit from like right now.
Yeah, social media outreach was a huge success. We had one person whose sole job was to find large following influencers, reach out to them, offer them some product, and then just start dialogue with them. So that, I mean, things that are easily measured like that, definitely, for somebody who's just coming off the street and doesn't really share the passion for the business yet, that's definitely a good place to start because we saw the needle move with those.
Yeah. So finding some bright side in all of COVID, again, to grow you guys' business. I think gotta shine the light on that and appreciate that. I mean, for me personally, that shit was brutal. I mean, looking around and seeing everybody else kind of hunkered down at home, really trying to, take care of themselves and, having to show up at these motherfucking multiple business brick and mortar locations because, before you know it, now the squad's dropping off. The manager you put over here can't hold it down. The manager over here can't hold it down. So now before I know it, I'm not only in these streets, but I'm like need to be in 3 different places at once. And the business is getting hammered. So, I don't want to be that guy, but like, I feel like if I was making money and I had to do that, I wouldn't give a fuck about the grind of like me doing all this shit. Mm-hmm. It's doing all that and there's no hope. And you're literally losing tens of thousands of dollars every fucking month. I was like, dude, as I was talking to Chris before getting on the mic, I was just like, man, like I really need to try to plug some of those holes, which I have by, letting a lot of the other businesses go. I made it through COVID, but it was just like, okay, now that we made it through it, like that was more of an emotional, like grit type of ego situation. Now it's like, all right, I don't want to ever be in that position again. I'd rather just like literally give this thing away so that it's not on my plate and try to have more of a stronger foundation and a little bit more, try to put something online, create another product that gets us out of our 4 walls that can help be another, means of revenue if shit hits the fan again, and not be so over leveraged. So yeah, dude, it was gnarly.
Yeah. I mean, that's an amazing feat. I think any brick and mortar, especially like in the service industry, where you have people coming in and like each person coming in means X amount of revenue. Anybody who made it through the pandemic is crushing it.
Yeah.
That seems so incredibly hard.
Yeah. I mean, at least, and just making sure that, as things shift that, your I guess your goalpost or like what you're using as like success needs to shift, and for me, it couldn't be about revenue because without a doubt, we're going to get our ass handed to us. It can be maybe, all right, let's take a little less losses and stop the bleeding where we can. But for me, it had to fully shift to this vision of like me on my deathbed or like with grandkids and like being able to tell this story about like grinding it through and making it through this situation and just like show that feat of resilience. You know what I mean? That's where it shifted for me. And it was like just realigning some of the metrics that I can actually gauge success in those moments,
Yep.
But now, that things are kind of starting to be behind us. It's now, okay, let's get more focused. Let's think about things less emotionally and more from a place of control. And what can we do to prevent that in the future? And I've always, from the outside looking in, just loved the idea of doing a product so I appreciate you guys for sharing a lot of this information. So moving forward, like where are you guys looking to grow things, like reaching out to retailers now that things maybe are kind of hopefully opening back up?
I mean, so retailing is going to take a backseat. It's just not as efficient. The return on investment, like time investment, capital investment, just isn't there as much for us. And we have a somewhat unique opportunity to just leverage our social media presence and align with key brands like yourself, being like a few brick and mortars, but really just pushing super hard into the social media space and try to go direct to consumer, maintain as much margin as we can and in turn grow as much as we can.
Yeah.
And then down the line, when we're kind of a little bit more comfortable, we have plenty of cash flow and we can branch out into retail and just, start like saturating the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is a really great product. And like we got it in at Lifted a few weeks ago now, and at least the past couple of weeks it's kind of turned to my go-to in the morning. Like I'll start with a little bit of coffee, but not much. And for sure, as I transition a little later into the morning, it's hone all day long.
Nice. What did you notice that was different from your typical caffeine regimen?
From I guess a physical standpoint, I've been really working on trying to be more in tune with how I feel, and like using sleep as a metric and I just know that once I go down that path of like just drinking more coffee, it's hard for me to stop. So that largely like the different change in like the flavor profile, since matcha is something a little more unique to me, it kind of stops that third and fourth cup of coffee that I'd usually transition to. So, I'm not one that necessarily notices like the pick me up from caffeine. It's just more of like the ritual of drinking coffee. But anytime I can get mushrooms into me, I do, so like even with my coffee, it's throwing lion's mane or cordyceps in there. So I like that idea of, always slipping in these adaptogens and knowing that they're going to be working behind the scenes, and cordyceps in particular, great for the respiratory system and opening up blood vessels. And, we do a lot of breath work and stuff here at the Spacebar. So, it's part of the conversation. So, that's pretty much why I've been gravitating towards it, and, always mixing it up, not becoming too dependent on one thing. It's been a nice change of pace for me.
Nice. And how about your customer base? Have they responded to it well?
They have essentially, yes, transitioned to lifted botanical bar. Like, we call ourselves lifted botanical bar, functional mushrooms, coffee, kava, and smoothies. So it's right there. People are gravitating more towards this functional mushroom thing. So it fits right perfectly on our menu because, we do a lot of mushroom-based lattes and drinks. So, we get to kind of really highlight this mushroom matcha, and it just piques people's interest. And I don't know if it's just our shift in our signage, because we were the Fit Bar down here before, just that shift in like lifted botanical, like people are just more willing to experiment, if you will, if they're just unfamiliar with mushrooms. I think there's enough conversation happening out there where it's not as much of a novelty. It's not as new. And for us to be like, you got to try this, and it's not going to change any taste that you might be expecting from a ceremonial matcha. It's going to be right there on par. So yeah, it's been received well. And, we haven't really promoted it other than just putting it on like literally an 8x11 menu that we have, and people are definitely gravitating towards it. So it's been great.
Sweet.
Nice. That's good to hear.
So a couple key takeaways, I guess, if you guys just want to kind of wrap things up, just maybe highlight a few things that might be roadblocks in somebody that wants to consume or wants to consider starting kind of a product similar to yours. What were the biggest challenges, whether it was sourcing or whatever it might be? And then, go from there.
Yeah. One of our biggest challenges to date has been raising capital. Raising capital is it's a grind. Ask anybody in the game. If you don't have your own money or you don't have your own means to borrow against for a bank, or you don't have generational wealth, it becomes exponentially more difficult to grow at the pace that you need to or would like to. So we've had to slow our growth down actually quite a bit because we can't move as quickly as some companies because they have larger pockets. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely one of the bigger things to consider, kind of like map out like what your burn rate's going to be ahead of time, just so you can stay ahead of the ball instead of like trying to play catch up with capital raising.
Yeah. And with that, like hypothetically, like if you guys were to raise capital, like, do you have like a good idea? Like we need this amount and what you would do with that and where that would go, like even at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys don't mind sharing with like your guys' stage of it, what kind of capital is needed for you guys to fully do what you want to do?
So we're looking to raise another $200,000, and then we're going to close the round, move on to another round, start raising almost immediately. And the idea behind that is because supply chain is so incredibly complicated, difficult, and just glued together right now. It's not fluid. Ari has been busting his ass trying to get us product because a lot of our stuff comes from Asia. Mushrooms come from Asia. Our matcha comes from Asia, and we have custom made jars that are coming in that are hand painted or screen printed in Asia. Mm. And so having these things coming from three different locations in Asia just makes things really, really difficult. So our lead times are much longer than they would normally be. So we have to have much healthier cash flow. We need cash in the bank way before we would normally need it. So we need to start our next order like way ahead of time. So like
a good example is
No. Please.
A good example is like we might go ahead and order 20,000 jars like now, so we can have them at the end of the year.
Right. Gotcha. And then like it doesn't even. So as you're raising capital coming from somebody who hasn't raise capital. Like we just fucking unfortunately bootstrap everything, which causes so many problems. Like it doesn't even make sense to like, oh, like I can get 30K, so let me get this 30K. Like it's 200K or kind of nothing. So like, how does that like process even work? Like say you have somebody who's like, and dude, I believe in what you're doing. Here's 5K. Would you even take that on?
I mean, at a certain point we would have. I think we require higher checks now just because we're trying to limit the amount of people we have on our cap table. But yeah, I mean, depending on the person, depending on how they benefit the company outside of pure capital, you know, if there's somebody that we want to have involved with us, we want their skin in the game, you know, per se, then yeah, we would entertain anything. You know, that we just brought on an investor who we're just excited to have him in our fold in any capacity. He's the founder of, have you ever heard of Soylent?
Yeah, he's been on the podcast. Well, one of the founders has been on the podcast. I don't know which one you're referring to.
His name's Rob.
No, so his partner early on has been on the podcast.
Oh, really cool.
Had him through the ice bath over here and everything. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, we were really excited to have him on, and honestly, we were excited to have him on in any capacity. So that's just an example of like us wanting to take somebody's skin in our game just to have them around. Because having smarter people than us just never hurts, you know.
Do you guys have feel any like pressure with taking on capital, or it's like, again, because I mean, I'm telling you, I don't know a lot about a lot of that shit, like in regards to taking on capital. So, for example, me knowing the person that I am, that I internalize so much shit, like especially relational, and like I have my own issues with money, not coming from, you know, much money, and whereas like if somebody's giving me this money, like there's so much pressure to not only obviously return that, but return them with their returns. Like, how does that feel for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's pressure.
Yeah, I think at first, because when we first started raising, it was pretty much like a year and a half ago. And like when we first got money, I think both Chris and I went through some, but what's it called? When you like you don't think you should be in that situation, but you are.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. We both went through some pretty intense imposter syndrome and just really nervous about it all. And I don't know, I think because we've been doing it for a year and a half and just kind of bugging everybody to potentially invest in us, like I feel like I'm almost numb to it at this point. And it just kind of is a necessary step of growing a business like this. And so it just kind of feels like we just have to, and it's okay. Like, and everybody that we talk to is like, you know, like I gave this money understanding that it's going to be gone. And I'm just kind of hoping that you succeed. I'm more betting on you than anything else. And like, you got it if you want.
Yeah. And like, I think getting that affirmation on the front end, where that's what I guess I struggle with, is because, you know, I don't necessarily have that money, but people do, where like they literally don't give a fuck if they lost that $50,000 or $100,000, right? So it's like they don't, you know, they know that, and like they're not really going to be grinding you for those returns necessarily. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I would love to kind of get to that place and where I could, you know, invest in these companies, but it's like I feel like personally, I'd be like, oh, fuck, bro, I need that money back.
Yeah, well, we also learned early on that we needed to have those conversations very transparently. Like, hey, there is a possibility, because, you know, this is like a high risk early stage investment. Your returns could be massive. Also, you could lose money, and you need, before you sign a check with yourself. If this disappears, will you be okay? So like, that's just a conversation that we had to, because we did friends and family early on. So we're literally raising from our friends who we party with over the years, and our family members. And we just wanted to be as transparent as humanly possible with them.
Yeah, it's necessary, man. Having those difficult conversations on the front end really helps with a lot of anguish kind of on the back end, and getting ahead of those friggin' loopholes and just repeating voice in your head is something I highly recommend, and I often struggle with. So,
absolutely,
yeah, man. It's interesting, man, because I had an opportunity for another, just a friend of mine was launching a product, and kind of, you know, not the closest friend, but I've had like, I had some conversation with him, and I'll say the product after, you know, get off, but it's, you know, just kind of sit back and see what he's done over the past year. I was like, man, fuck, it'd been nice to kind of invest in that. It's kind of a similar, you know, lane as you guys too, you know, and it's like, I know that the sky's the limit with a product like your guys's, and, going direct to consumer in the health and wellness space. And it's just, I really want to figure out how to be more involved with that or something along those lines, man. So I really appreciate you guys, sharing openly of some of the struggles and some of the successes and, what it actually looks like to put something like this together, because it's no easy feat. And oftentimes when you're doing it right, it looks easy, right? So people assume it's easy and it's like, oh, their Instagram looks so fucking fun. And, I want people to know that that's not always the case, that there's a lot of hard work that goes into it and luck. A lot of luck too.
That's funny. Ari and I were just having a conversation about our Instagram feeds and how a lot of our friends think we're killing it. We have like these lives that, when you step back and you look at our Instagrams, it does look like we have pretty sweet lives that are just like completely unencumbered by the work that we're doing. And we were like, we gotta change that. We gotta make it seem a little bit more like down to earth, like how we're actually living life.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a fine line because, as you're looking to raise capital or whatever it might be, like people, and even just buying the product, like we're such a fucking, like it's all about mimetic theory, and people are only going to buy into the lives that they want to lead. And it's like such a mind. So there's obviously a lot of value and authenticity in having these conversations. Like sometimes the best feedback I get is when I'm just completely vulnerable, tearing up, talking about my fucking 6-gram mushroom trip. And it's like people really resonate with that, right? But it's like also, where's this line of being a professional to buy these things? Like to me, it's super blurred. So I might not be the best to give advice about that. So being more true to who you are, like if it's holding you back and you feel a little fucking icky or fraudulent doing this thing, it's a balance, man, of getting right with it. But you'll sell a shit ton of products by making it look like super fun and living that life, man. I
mean, it is fun. At the end of the day, like it's hard. We go through stages of like having nothing to do for, weird amounts of time and then having everything to do all at once. So, I mean, like, I don't know, our lives are cool. There are so many times where Ari and I have looked at each other and been like, how did we get here? This is so cool. Like us. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, it's cool. I actually have a question for you. I'm curious about, so 2021, what was one L that sticks out really hard, and then one win, like your most profound win of the year?
I would say the L being largely just super over leveraged with multiple brick and mortar spots and not quite being able to have the space to work on the things that I knew that I cognitively knew that I needed to fix because I wasn't in the emotional space to do it. I was just piecing things together, running all around. So yeah, I would say that was like the L, not figuring out how to get out of that. And sometimes some of it was like having conversations that I didn't really want to have. Like, how do I let go of this location, and just have that conversation versus drag it out and deal with like the anguish of being pulled in so many different directions for, more months than I needed to. So I would say that kind of was like this L from just a quality of life standpoint that didn't need to be that bad, largely because I didn't want to feel like I failed, or honestly, I didn't even know how to let things go, what that looked like. And then the win, I think, would be taking steps towards that. We sold a property that, we were stoked on to have. Like we had this fit bar location down in Sunset Beach. It was like right on the beach. Somehow came up on purchasing the property a couple of years ago. But in this process of letting things go, just kind of listed it and we sold it and kind of came up on the sell of that. But so I'd take that as a win, less of like, okay, cool, like I made all this money, because that wasn't really the case, but more like I knew what was holding me back from being stretched so thin and not being stoked on life, to being able to be like, all right, coming to terms with this, let's lighten my plate, let's just hone in on this Pasadena location. So towards the end of 2021, definitely did a lot of that, and I'd say that was a huge win. A lot of like just internal struggle in doing that. A lot of things tied up in that, but committing to it and doing it and not looking back and just be like, all right, cool. We got this like new place to start from. And that's why, start getting back on this mic, having these conversations, getting inspired for what the future could look like and not really giving a fuck about what just happened in the past.
Nice.
For sure. So
good. Presence of mind and clarity is what that sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, some of that, some of the letting go was which was scary for me. It was like, I know how I'm wired. I know that I get really excited about doing certain things. I have a shit ton of ideas. And the fear was like, okay, I'm going to let these things go. And then I'm just going to recreate the mess that I had just created or just got out of, you know what I mean? So it's like just getting some more clarity on that, because what's tied up in a lot of that is like my superhero qualities, you know, the things that I bring to the table as like value is like this ability to have an idea, act on it, and bring it to life with zero money. You know what I mean? Like, so just getting clarity on, okay, how do I focus that in on what's next, without recreating the issues, right? Or the same problem. So yeah, that's that.
Getting it better and better.
Yeah,
right?
man, for sure. So, in regards to Hone, where people can find it, you guys want to send them to the website or the Instagram?
Yeah. We'll send you a link that you can post on the podcast if you have podcast notes.
Cool.
Otherwise, we can just tell them here. It's honeblends.com. Our Instagram handle is just @Hone. We got super lucky with that. Bought it off a kid back in 2019 who was using it as a meme page for $1,000.
Oh, wow.
Cannot tell you how excited we were about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting on Bone Hugs and Harmony right now. I had somebody reach out for it, and I was like, "Nah, I'm going to make some stickers." But anywho, buy up some domains if you guys have any creative domain names. This is a nice little way to make a G from awesome guys like you. That's awesome. But everyone's wins in that, right? And then if you guys are by the Fit Bar locations in West Seattle or Renton, Washington, or in Pasadena, come by Lifted and try Hone in person. You know, feel the missing ingredient that's here is the love that we supply when we make that shit and the smile on our face. So
I felt it. It hits different here.
It does hit a little different. So really appreciate to kind of get a front row seat of what you guys are doing and hearing more about it. Feel free to reach out. You know, this is largely going to be going out to our Fit Bar pages and our email list there. So for you guys, come by and try this in person and give them a follow on Instagram. And I'm sure they'll answer any questions for you entrepreneurs out there that might be wanting to do something similar, because like they said, the lifestyle looks really fun.
Yeah. And we'll toss you a discount code to throw on your show notes.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So your listeners can go check it out for themselves and order it to wherever they might be.
Cool. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, really appreciate you guys' time. Thank you so much. Hopefully all this technical setup actually pans out.
It looks great. Sounds great to me.
All right, Ari, it's great to meet you, man. Have a great day, guys.
You too, man.
See you, bud.
Absolutely. See you guys.
Bye.